What's going on, folks? Eddie Carrington, Mayor of Flux City, and today we are going to be reviewing an RFP or a request for proposal that the city of Detroit issued for a particular property here in the city of Detroit. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of talk through what to be mindful of when it comes to putting together a packet to submit for a project that you may or may not have had an opportunity to tackle due to your current and past experience. So, my background is mostly single family fix and flips, some wins, some losses. And I, back in 2017, got an inkling for wanting to level up after I came across a fellow developer by the name of Cliff Brown, and I actually saw myself in him due to the fact that he was a brother. He was really comfortable in his skin, and he was doing big things in the city of Detroit. And up until that point, I never was introduced to a developer that looked and talked like me until then. And so that kind of expanded my horizon and my thought of what is greater and what is capable when it comes to leveling up in this space. But with that said, that kind of took me down this road of putting together proposals for opportunities that I came across and ultimately getting me to a point where I had an opportunity to redevelop the Ribbon, which is in East English Village, and the site that I've been highlighting with you guys for the last roughly year and a half. So this is an opportunity for you to once again walk through the proposal for a project in an up and coming city, or more specifically neighborhood in the city of Detroit, and kind of think through things to be mindful of as you put together this proposal that you may be wanting to send over to the city of Detroit to have them consider you and your team to redevelop this site. So let's jump right into it. We're looking at 2900 Tyler Street. So the city of Detroit's Housing and Revitalization Department issued out this request for proposal on the 13th of this month. So 12/13/24. And I did miss the pre-submission conference, but usually when the city does RFPs, this conference or these on screens give us an opportunity as developers to sit in and listen to the representatives from the city firsthand and learn what they're looking for in more detail based off of this packet, and very valuable to if you're able to make those types of on-screen meetings when you're pondering putting together a proposal for whatever project. In this case, 2900 Tyler, you definitely want to be in attendance. But there is also an on-scene or on-site visit January 31st, 2025, and there's a proposal submission deadline by 2/21/25. As we go through this proposal, I really want you to make sure that if you are planning on submitting for this or any other type of project, don't wait until the 21st of February or the last day to submit your proposal. Try your best at putting in that work now, and it is pretty helpful to walk the site before you submit your final proposal, which you in turn in this example will have an opportunity to do so on January 31st. But with that said, try not to wait until the very last day to submit your proposal, because similar to a college course where you may have a deadline to submit a test or a paper by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, that kind of makes the teacher a little nervous about your quality of work and your management of your time to find yourself last minute submitting this test or this paper uh into them. And similarly with this proposal, you have your city of Detroit being a partner, and they want to make sure that even when it comes down to putting together a proposal, you know what you're doing and you know how to manage your time when it comes to putting together the pieces to the puzzle in order to present a strong project to the city in a timely fashion. Let's go ahead and read the project overview. The City of Detroit's Housing and Revitalization Department is partnering with the Detroit Housing Commission on on the rehab of 2900 Tyler Street, a currently vacant 14-unit structure in the Dexter Linwood neighborhood. This neighborhood is really hot right now. It's been a neighborhood that a lot of Detroiters thought would be on its comeback years ago due to the amount of traffic, the amount of density, the quality of homes, and with Davison being one of the first highways in the country, there's a bit of history over in that area as well. However, it's been a little slow to kind of gain momentum until recently. And I'll talk about a few things that they have already going in that community as of right now. That if you were to develop this site, you'd be developing next to multi-million dollar streetscapes and other developments that are coming down the line here in the next few years. But a 14 unit structure, and I'm just going to scroll back up to the original or cover page. This is an old structure that needs a lot of work, right? And we're talking a lot of mason work, even from looking at this one picture. We got to think through the elements being uh, able to get into the envelope of this facility for years and years. It's usually common for these types of facilities to have water coming in, bad roof, you name it. You're going to have a lot of need in order to get this project back to its original glory, which ultimately boils down to higher rehab costs and the need for us as developers to put together a capital stack that makes sense based off of the amount of rehab that we're going to need to put into this site. But back to this site here, and more specifically this screenshot, and you can kind of see the bird's eye view of the neighborhood. I always like these bird's eye type images because this immediately gives me a thought of, hey, look, we don't have any parking for this site, and parking is always an issue when it comes to redeveloping in the city of Detroit. So there are a few open lots that we can see, and I'm not exactly sure what this facility is here, but maybe there's an opportunity to work with this facility for parking or buy some plots of land over in this area to accommodate your tenants and allow for them to have the usual required parking for these types of redevelopments. So this is where it gets a little interesting with this proposal, which is something I've never seen in an RFP up until now. So for one, this is pretty common when it comes to envisioning the two pathways to complete this project. Option one, purchase, rehab, and lease. And that is something that makes sense to me. You purchase the property from the city of Detroit, you provide affordable housing, whether it be low income, affordable, or workforce housing. You make sure, with regard to high quality of the actual finishes, that it's not just a cheaply built facility, and you maintain long term affordability. So, some type of deed restriction baked into the purchase and management of this site, which is something you could potentially renegotiate yourself out of, whether it be once you're complete with the project or even before you get to the close table, to not necessarily lock you in for long term affordability for all of the units. Let's say eventually you want to get to a point where you're able to offer some of the units at market rate, whereas you still want to keep a certain percentage at the affordable or workforce housing level. But in general, this does make sense. Whereas option two rehabilitate and buy back. So this path will consist of a developer agreeing to rehab the structure to all HQS standards and offering first right of refusal to the city of Detroit. And upon completion and acceptance of the project, the GC will sell the completed project back to the city of Detroit. For this path, the city of Detroit will focus on the following aspects: on time delivery and on budget, and high quality product. So that is intriguing. So they're willing to work with a GC or a developer to have them rehab this property and purchase it back from them once they're complete with this site. And I don't know if I've seen that before until now. So that is pretty interesting. So when it comes to the guiding principles for this site, high quality, affordable housing. So once again, we're not talking putting in some mid to low level finishes. We're talking top shelf finishes, even though we're still doing an affordable redevelopment of this site. On time delivery, not easy to do comparative to single family fix and flips, where you could have a really good understanding as to how long it's going to take for you to finish the floors, get the HVAC updated, get your hot water tank installed, your kitchen installed, so on and so forth. Whereas, and even with regard to your utilities and getting those turned on, because in a lot of cases you already have the line ran. Whereas when we're talking a development such as this, we're going to have to update the power, which could theoretically put us in a predicament where we're waiting on DTE once we're starting construction to finish what they need to finish in order for us to continue moving on to another phase of the redevelopment. They're behind in some aspects of their work and required updating of their their power infrastructure for newer and updated facilities such as what we're talking through now. So that's one of many concerns. But on top of that, you run into challenges with your funding partners, you run into challenges with your subcontractors. You just never know. And so no matter how good you are at putting together a schedule of completion, it's really, really tough to kind of keep that schedule and stay true to that schedule due to a lot of different factors that you may or may not have control over. But growing Detroit's development talent. Now, this is something that intrigues me because this gives us an opportunity as up and coming developers who may or may not have had an opportunity to redevelop larger structures such as this to be looked at in a way where the city is willing to look past the lack of experience in some aspects of the overall makeup of the team. And so if the developer has not done a project of this magnitude, well, maybe somebody on your team has. And when we talk about your team, that doesn't necessarily mean a co-developer. It could also mean your GC, your architect, an advisor, things of that nature, or people of that nature who could kind of fill the experience gap that you may have due to the fact that you have not taken down a project of this size at this point. So this is really good for us emerging developers as the city is willing to give us a second look when we submit our proposal. Cost effective and efficient. Now, it depends on what you're building, but it's really expensive for new construction and rehab at this level. This is a little different than going into with a single family home, Home Depot, picking your flooring and picking your this now cost effective and efficient. The city is looking for the best pricing for a project that provides both quality and project delivery. We'll talk a little bit more about this a little down the line, but that's also a bit challenging as well. It also gives us a format of what to incorporate in our proposal. And so, as you can see here, you have your project description, your team experience, your financing, your design, and your project timeline. So, one thing about your team experience, if you don't have the experience to take down a larger or a commercial project at this moment, don't let that scare you away. Back to the point of having the right partnership with your GC, your architect, and using their experience to fill that gap. This is the opportunity where you can uh, format your team experience section in a way that makes you as a team well rounded, as opposed to you going in and just submitting the team experience of your resume and your resume alone. And so you definitely want to have conversations with a GC that is capable of taking down this larger project, that's capable of gaining access to a bond that is usually needed for these larger commercial projects in comparison to single family homes, which is where you're able to, in a way, put your starting five team together. You got your HVAC team, you got your plumbing, you got your flooring and your kitchen guys, you got your demo team, right? And so at the end of the day, it's a little harder to accomplish a larger project, but usually the right partner can obviously execute the way they need to and also help you fill some gaps via your potential lack of experience. Project financing, this is a bit challenging too because you may not have experience reaching out to funding partners and trying to pitch them on projects of this size, but that doesn't mean that you can't do so. You can't zap an email out to somebody with a CDFI or a bank that you have a relationship with to see what the options are for getting a project like this financed. And in this packet, they actually have a few links and organizations that you can reach out to and talk through the funding options that you will have with this site in partnership with the city of Detroit. Project design, you will definitely want to talk to an architect on a rehab like this. You may not necessarily think you need one, but I think it's a good opportunity to have a conversation about what is capable. Maybe there's an opportunity to right size these units and potentially make some bigger. Let's say they're only 300 square feet in some instances, and so you may say, "Hey, look, I need to take this from 14 down to 11 because we want to make sure these spaces are big enough for a tenant in 2024. This is not 1930, 1940." Or there may be opportunity to expand the number of units that you have from 14 to 16, which will ultimately help you with your cash flow. So those are the types of things to kind of think through with an architect, as well as understanding the level of rehab that may or may not be needed. So there are different levels, level 1, level 2 rehab, and there are certain benefits of keeping a redevelopment under a certain level or within a certain level to in turn avoid having to put this project in front of the city of Detroit's planning division, who will scrutinize your project for good reason, but that also adds an extra layer of complexity to your overall due diligence as you work through getting this project from the due diligence phase to the closing table. And then the project timeline, once again, pretty tough to kind of stick to a timeline, but at the very least, you want to make sure you think through as much as you can and you just put it all on paper. So, preliminary project schedule, timeline, construction timeline, lease up, strategy for developing the site should be clearly outlined. And there are a number of examples that you can find online that give you an idea of what a timeline could look like, but it doesn't have to be fancy. So don't spend too much time on your project timeline. Now, I did I did not mention with your project financing, you want to incorporate, as it says here, a pro forma. And the good thing about us being here in the state of Michigan is MEDC has a pro forma template that we developers have access to. And it is very familiar when it comes to the funding partners seeing it consistently across the board, especially when it comes to these types of projects that we as developers may try to get things like a brownfield tax abatement on, and that goes through MEDC. Maybe there's CRP dollars that are available, RAP funding, and so on and so forth. So let me show you where we can, as Michiganders, find a pretty cool template to work from when it comes to a pro forma that we could ultimately incorporate into our packet. So give me a second here. All right, so what I ended up doing was I went to uh, Google and basically Googled MEDC Proforma 101. I'm going to click on the first link here. And this web page has a number of different resources that us as developers here in Michigan could take advantage of. But what I want to do now is really just show you where we can find a pro forma template to work with, and that is located here. So you click on that, and when you scroll down here, you see the MCRP application and pro forma workbook. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to open up that zip here, and voila. Now we have a template of a pro forma to work with. Now it's a little hidden in this packet. So what you'd want to do is go to the revenue tab. My computer's running a little slow. Okay, so hopefully it has caught up with me. I don't think it has yet. But we're just going to roll with it. As you can see, this is where we're able to add our projected rents here in this section. This is where we're able to update our pro forma here. As you can see, you can actually type in your numbers for your operating expenses, and it actually updates in real time for you. Your loan projections over in this area here, as well as the potential interest rate you may get, and your sources and uses. This is a really, really good tool, not to mention your cash flow. If you click on cash flow, it actually gives you your 10-year projections as well. So you just have to input the forecasted numbers in the proper areas, and this will allow you to export these different tabs via PDF format that you can fold into your overall proposal. So this is also pretty important information here. So 2900 Tyler Street is within Dexter Linwood's strategic neighborhood. So this is also some very, very important information. One thing to point out is 2900 Tyler is actually within the Dexter Linwood neighborhood, adjacent to the Russell Woods and Arden Park strategic neighborhood framework area, which was completed by the city in 2018. And this may mean that there are opportunities for us to gain access to grant dollars that entities like Invest Detroit provide for strategic neighborhoods, such as the Dexter Linwood community. So, and or the surrounding areas in this neighborhood. So really, really important to be mindful of that, and to, if you're thinking about putting a proposal together, reaching out to Invest Detroit to see what opportunities there may be for funding that could be used to fill a gap that you may have for your project. So I'll keep that in mind as you're reviewing this proposal. And there is a link at the bottom or closer to the end of this proposal. And the link of the proposal will be in the comment section below, or in the description more specifically below. So this page here kind of talks about all of the investment in the community up to this point, and it's a lot. So the Dexter Streetscape, $9.5 million. The Helen Moore Community Center, $12 million. Park and open space improvements, over $1.5 million. This area has seen a number of improvements, investments, and this is as we're once again determining if this is something that could make sense for us or not. This could be a project that we put together a proposal and see what happens due to the fact that this area has a concentrated amount of investment and activity. A little different than a community that may not have as much investment from the city, from these different funding entities and partners. And unfortunately, it's harder to develop within areas that have little to no activity versus an area that has this movement of sorts regarding or the spur of investment from these different funding partners and organizations. So something to think about there. And the land bank has sold a ton of properties over in this area that have been rehabbed by investors, homeowners, so on and so forth. And this area has a pretty good amount of density as is. Every city in the or every neighborhood in the city has had some type of challenge, or most have had some type of challenge with regard to density. But in this area, this area is pretty well densed, if that's a word, to a point where there are a lot of homeowners, but there are also, to my knowledge, a decent amount of renters as well, which if you're purchasing this site and you're wanting to rent these units, that may actually be a good thing. So as you can see here, the Housing and Revitalization Department is monitoring and assisting several affordable housing rehabs in the region that are currently in pre-development or in construction. So Dexter Senior Assistant Living, this is a $20 million project. The Cabot Apartments, I might not be mentioning the name properly, $16.8 million project. Dexter Corner, aka El Morda Apartments, $15 million project. So this area is seeing the investment that has been demanded by the community for years, and that is spurring funding partners to work with developers to help stand up these types of larger facilities, which ultimately means uh, that's a good thing for somebody who is considering this project and submitting a proposal for 2900 Tyler Street. And even the Dexter pop-up retail, a really, really cool concept. $600,000 retail pop-up space in Russell Woods. And the pop-up shop is made out of shipping containers, and it's a really unique concept that was recently announced earlier this year. And I'm a big fan of, actually, was it this year or last year? Okay, late last year. And so I'm a big fan of these types of infill, these commercial infill concepts that are unique to the city of Detroit. And once again, this just goes to show how good of a potential neighborhood and opportunity this may be for the right developer to put together a proposal for this site. So you got more examples here as we kind of go through. This kind of highlights the congregation, really cool coffee shop that also serves libations. You definitely want to check this place out. Really tasty food, really good environment. They converted an old church into this really unique experience. And it is something that if you're in Detroit, you should definitely go by and check out if you have not yet at this point. So the next page here kind of goes into detail of the option two, the rehab and buyback. So let's look through this, because if you're a GC, this is asking for a particular set of materials that you want to incorporate in your proposal. So valid GC license, construction trade breakdown, construction schedule, evidence of bonding and insurance, project budget, financing letter, GC bios and reference projects showing address, capital stack, development team, construction completion, start, end, and lease updates. Any proposed tax abatements being sought for this project, whether it be a PA 210, which is a 10-year tax abatement. The pilot initiative is going to be a really, really good opportunity for developers who are focused on affordable and workforce housing. being able to really identify your tax burden per door, which is really unique to for-profit developers here in the state. And I'm really glad that the city has approved the pilot initiative. And if you're in the city of Detroit, you're a developer, you want to Google the pilot tax abatement or the pilot initiative to learn a little bit more information about that opportunity. But this really does give us some good information. Now, what's also interesting is we have an asking price of $14,000. So you may look at that and say, "Oh, 14 grand, that's nothing. I'm going to purchase that and that's cheaper than the property that I bought 2 months ago that in the same area that cost me 40 or 50,000." Right? But when you start breaking down the budget on a 14 unit facility rehab such as this, all of the mason work, there may be foundation issues, a new roof, new services to every single unit, an updated potentially an updated sewer run and water line, depending on what needs to be right sized and so on and so forth. This could have a pretty high cost associated with rehabbing this in comparison to your single family fix and flips that you may have experience with. This is a lot different. We can't go into Home Depot and say, "You know what, those cabinets look good. Let's go ahead and get those. Let's buy 14 hot water tanks. Let's do this and that." And technically you could, but when it comes to these types of redevelopments, the GC has to be licensed, bonded, and so they have to warranty their work. And all of that comes with a cost in comparison to if you were rehabbing your own house, once again, putting together your own starting five and doing some of the work yourself. If you're not a GC, if you're not licensed, more than likely this is going to be done with physical assistance from you. Where, in my experience, more specifically, I'd buy a house, tear the wall down myself, go pick up the materials, drop them off, deal with the subs directly. Whereas in this scenario, once again, depending on which option you're choosing, whether it be one or two, if you're choosing option one, you're not necessarily actually doing that work yourself. So this page gives us, and this is closer to the end of the packet. Once again, I will link the packet in the description, but this gives us an opportunity to see what options there are for the potential um, gap that we're going to be facing when it comes to putting together a pro forma that makes sense, that allows for us to cover our debt service and allow for us to redevelop this site. You're not going to make a ton of money on something like this. And I think a lot of people are, once you really start getting into the thick of it all, a lot of people are surprised at just how little you make from these types of projects in comparison to your fix and flips of your single family properties. You could make more money fixing and flipping 14 individual properties as opposed to this. Matter of fact, you might have a 4 unit that is already rehabbed and you bought from the auction, or you purchased from a private seller some years back and was churning a profit for you. That 4 unit may make more money for you than this 14 unit, depending on certain variables. Whereas we're hoping that the value increases over time if we're going to buy and hold this 14 unit project. And we're also hoping that at the very least it covers its debt service, but maybe there's an opportunity 5, 7, 10 years from now where we're able to refinance and pull some capital out to put into another project. But a lot of people think that the developers here in the city are making a ton of money, and that is very far from the truth. A lot of us developers are really barely covering our debt service as opposed to what you see downtown, midtown. But when it comes to being an impact investor, you don't care about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the impact that you're providing to the community that you're developing within. You're beautifying these neighborhoods and you're providing space for individuals who don't have potentially a space to stay that is of quality as to what you're going to be providing in comparison to what they've been living in, especially when we're talking affordable workforce housing. There aren't enough quality units for people to have access to, and that's where we come in play. But once again, you're not going to make $1 million off of this project from day one, right? It may take a while before you actually see the type of return that you're hoping for out of something like this. But if you're looking to get into development when it comes to the neighborhood development opportunities for the money, you may want to think twice. But with that said, I just want to point out on this page that there are a number of different partners that you can reach out to before submitting your proposal to understand what they're willing to provide assistance wise, funding wise. Maybe they're even willing to walk through a pro forma with you, provide a letter of intent or a letter of recommendation, so on and so forth. So really, really make sure you click on all of these links as you determine if this is a project you want to submit a proposal on. And even better, this page also incorporates evaluation criteria. And so let's take a look at this. So, respondent and proposed team experience, local hiring and participation. This is good for if you're living in Detroit, a Detroit based project team. Once again, this is going to give you a leg up in comparison to somebody who may not actually be headquartered in the city of Detroit. So be mindful of the fact that there is power in your residency here in the city. And in this scenario, you could take full advantage of it when you're submitting your proposal. Be proud of the fact that you're living in the city and or headquartered in the city, and you highlight that as such in your proposal. The program strategy, financial and leverage capacity, project design standards. And so, once again, this gives us a lot of good information as we prep our proposal for this site or any other site that the City of Detroit's Housing and Revitalization Department plans to release. But I appreciate you making it to the end of this video. I know I've rambled a lot here, but I am really hoping that you found some value with regard to what we covered today. And let me know if you want me to do more of these types of videos. I'm truly experimenting with my YouTube channel, and I would love to hear more from you as I try my best at providing some type of value and benefit to you as you go through this journey of leveling up in this real estate realm. So Eddie Carrington, Mayor of Flux City, signing out. I'll see you in the next video.